After Hillary Clinton rightly suggested that MAGA Republicans are cultists in need of deprogramming, the Fox propaganda network clutched its pearls in outrage. Unfortunately for them, they chose to do it in front of our queen, Jessica Tarlov, who destroyed them with facts and logic. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, I need a gavel or something because once again, we are calling a meeting of the official Jessica Tarlov fan club, the lone sane voice on the Fox Propaganda Network. Typically, she appears on the 5. She's outnumbered 4-1, but she is more than a match for any of them. So for context, I'm going to play this quick 30-second clip of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, in which she says the offensive remarks.
And sadly, so many of those extremists, those MAGA extremists, take their marching orders from Donald Trump, who has no credibility left by any measure. He's only in it for himself. He's now defending himself in civil actions and criminal actions. And when do they break with him? You know, because at some point, you know, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members, but something needs to happen.
Again, we discussed this in a previous video, not the Jessica Tarlov part, but a lot of people, certainly on the right, but even the left, are offended by what Secretary Clinton had to say. I can understand why some people would find it offensive, but as Ben Shapiro says, facts don't care about your feelings, gang. And it's simply true. MAGA Republicans do often resemble a cult. Now, after she made these remarks, the Fox propaganda show, the 5, covered it. And again, they made the mistake of complaining about Secretary Clinton's remarks in front of Jessica Tarlov. And this next minute and 30 seconds are just phenomenal. So we're going to play the clip and unpack it together.
But I really need everyone to spare me the faux outrage and the pearl clutching about this little collection of things that Donald Trump and high-ranking Republicans call liberals on a daily basis: anarchists, anti-American, deranged, communists, corrupt, compromised, groomers and perverts, thugs and traitors. Now, she was explicit that she was talking about a subsection of the Republican Party the same way that Joe Biden is when he talks about this MAGA extremism. But you tell me, if the leader of the Democratic Party, so that would be Joe Biden, was facing 4 indictments with 91 felony counts, he had been found liable of sexually assaulting a woman and defaming her, that's E. Jean Carroll, guilty of fraud, sharing the nation's secrets, not only in the Mar-a-Lago indictment, but there was a report yesterday from ABC News that he had shared information about our nuclear submarine capacities with an Australian billionaire who's a member at Mar-a-Lago, who had then gone on and shared that with dozens of other people, and ended up making a purchase, I think, of 3 subs. It included specifics up to how many nuclear warheads they carry and how close they can get to Russian subs without being detected. And then I told you, so all of that is happening, and he's shooting up in the polls. And when you see those interviews of Trump supporters outside of the rallies, they're like, none of this is true. It's the big lie. He won the election, et cetera. And you wouldn't say to me, you guys are in a cult? It's actually tame what Hillary Clinton was saying.
Preach, queen. Pop off, queen, as the kids say, as my nieces and nephews would say. 100% true. Love that. This is something that I complain about. This is something that Luke complains about, that others have complained about. This is absolutely the case. The asymmetry of expectations. She is correct. Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party. Hillary Clinton is not the leader of the Democratic Party. We're already at an asymmetry. She's a private citizen giving an interview, okay? Donald Trump was the president of the United States, is still the leader of the Republican Party, is actively campaigning to be the president of the United States again. He should be held not to a lower standard than Hillary Clinton, but to a higher standard than Hillary Clinton. And when you consider that, he says all kinds of things infinitely worse than anything Hillary Clinton has ever said about any Republican at any point in time. The asymmetry is wild. But again, conservatives are really good, and unfortunately many of us on the left are really bad about just accepting the false premise and just expecting more. Yeah, we're going to complain and clutch our pearls about what Hillary Clinton has to say. Absolutely not. Infinitely more scrutiny and condemnation needs to be directed towards what Donald Trump says before I will ever spend any amount of time even remotely criticizing what Hillary Clinton says. And that should be the standard for you too. That should be the challenge for right-wingers, for conservatives, for Republicans, for enlightened centrists who want to complain about what Secretary Clinton has to say, no, no, no. We have to do this in order, right? We're not going to skip over a dollar for the sake of a nickel. If you want to talk about Hillary Clinton, we need to first address Trump. And once you acknowledge that Trump is infinitely worse in all ways, which is simply the fact of the matter, then I'll spend 30 seconds wagging my finger at Secretary Clinton. Great on Jessica Tarlov. We have one more clip to play, however, in which Judge Jeanine Pirro tries to make the case in the same episode that Republicans aren't censorious and Republicans don't go after the media. Brace yourselves.
So, no one on the Republican Party side has called for the silencing of newspapers and social media
Fake news.
conversation.
He ran.
Excuse me, I'm asking Jesse a question. Okay, no one on the Republican side has said, do not let anyone talk about Hunter's laptop. Make sure that the conservatives get suppressed on social media. I mean, this is consistent with the whole idea of silencing Americans if they don't agree with the left.
So, of course, the right wouldn't say that you should censor Hunter Biden's laptop. The right is the one who wants you to talk about Hunter Biden's laptop ad infinitum. But in terms of the overall principle that the right or the Republican Party or Republican leaders haven't called for the censorship and silencing of opponents, she's lying. She's just flat out lying. She's not only a little wrong, she's majorly wrong. The ACLU had a list. I don't even know if it's updated, but this goes back to how old? Oh my God. This is as far back as 2017. So this isn't even up to date with some of the crazy stuff that Trump has done. This was early on in his presidency, but they talk about, how Trump wants to threaten to change libel laws to make it easier to sue publishers and news organization following the release of an unflattering book. Threatened legal action against a journalist and publisher over a book that includes critical statements about them. Demanded that the Washington Post fire a reporter over an inaccurate tweet about the crowd size at a Trump rally. Urged people to sue ABC News. I mean, the list goes on. Threatens to cancel the broadcast licenses of media companies that offer negative coverage about him. Had the White House press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who's now the governor of Arkansas, call ESPN to fire Jameel Hill for criticizing him. And on and on and on and on and on. You will not find anything remotely close like this, to this, under Joe Biden. Joe Biden is infinitely better when it comes to respecting the media. Not a little bit. Infinitely better. They're orders of magnitude apart. Per usual, Joe Biden is morally superior in all ways to Donald Trump. It's not even close, but we have even more examples than that. This is a tweet, again, early on in Trump's presidency, back in October of 2017. He wasn't even in office a year. Why isn't the Senate Intelligence Committee looking into the fake news networks in our country to see why so much of our news is just made up fake? That was the sitting president of the United States urging the Senate Intelligence Committee to use its congressional powers to put pressure on the media. That's censorious. Joe Biden has never done anything like that. But wait, it gets even more, because you could say, well, that's in the past. Well, number one, I reject that because Trump hasn't repented and apologized and flogged and flagellated for the terrible things that he said, and the media never covered it, or at least the right-wing media never covered it. But even recently, folks, this is what he said on Truth Central back in September 24th. They are almost all dishonest and corrupt, but Comcast, with its one-sided and vicious coverage by NBC News, and in particular MSNBC, often incorrectly referred to as MSDNC, should be investigated for its country-threatening treason. He's accusing MSNBC of treason. I say up front, openly and proudly, that when I win the presidency of the United States, they and others of the lamestream media will be thoroughly scrutinized for their knowingly dishonest and corrupt coverage of people, things, and events. Why should NBC or any other of the corrupt and dishonest media companies be entitled to use the very valuable airwaves of the USA free? They are the true threat to democracy. They are, in fact, the enemy of the people. The fake news media should pay a big price for what they've done to our once great country. Joe Biden, nor Hillary Clinton, nor any other current former leader of the Democratic Party has ever said anything like this. I love the energy that Jessica Tarlov brings to this. And again, you and I, we all in our own way need to do this. Flatly, smugly, just harshly reject the false premise that's imposed on us by right-wing media. She should be rubbing it in as she does. I mean, this is great. She's always great, but more of this, to look Jeanine Pirro in the face and say, no, you are the party of Donald Trump. As long as Donald Trump is your standard bearer, and until such a day as you eject him and reject him and then repent for the terrible things that he's said and done, the Democratic Party, in terms of its leadership, will always be colossally morally superior to the leadership of the Republican Party. It's not even close. Love this energy from Jessica Tarlov. It's great stuff. And again, people need to take their cues from her as well. She does this in the Lion's Den. She's outnumbered 4-1. She's up against people like Jeanine Pirro who like to interrupt her and cut her off. Same thing with Jesse Waters and Greg Gutfeld. Constant interrupt. The stress has to be colossal. People need to be more like her when engaging. Certainly journalists on CNN as well. Love it. Great stuff. I'm sure she's going to have more awesome stuff for us to review this next week.